Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our dad panel. Thanks to our fine panel of gentlemen who have taken time out of their schedules to share with us the answers to some questions that we're all dying to know. We're going to try to keep this flowing and engaging, and the gentlemen have been given their questions ahead of time, so I'm not going to put anyone on the spot and mortify them. So I think that we're just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to have all of our dads introduce themselves, and then we'll go from there. So have at it, guys. All right.
Go ahead. Oh, there we go.
Okay. Yes.
That always happens, doesn't it?
No.
That silence.
So I'll have Chris. Why don't you start?
There you go. Okay.
Okay. My name is Chris Diller. I'm married to Corinne Diller. We have two beautiful children, Zoe Grace Diller, who is almost 5 years old. She's July 5th, rather. She'll be 5 years old. And Elias Ian, who is almost 2 years old. We have been married for almost 8 years, happily. We are pushing through this coronavirus thing. She's been struggling with having kids at home, which I'm sure everybody else has, but yeah, that's our story.
Great, thank you. Jordan.
Yeah, so my name's Jordan Maynard. I am married to Kristen. We have one little girl who turned 2 in January, Harper. And then we've got another little lady on the way pretty much any day now. And her name will be Reagan Shirley. I've been married for almost 6 years now. We started young and we've been together for 11 now, so ever since I was 16, 15 years old.
Awesome. Dan?
My name is Dan Frazzini. I am a single father of 3 boys for about 14 years now. Oldest is 25, still have 2 in high school up here at CT. Jake is 16 and Mac is 15. And I work from home, so I'm not sure what the big deal is about all you guys being quarantined. It's pretty much all for me.
Right. Business as usual.
That's right.
Except without Orange Theory.
No, you're killing me, Monica. You're killing me.
I know. All righty. Jason, unmute yourself and let's hear from you.
Hey, yeah, guys, my name's Jason. Amanda and I have been married for about 3.5 years, and we have Knox Cedar, our one about 18-month-old right now.
Awesome. Eric?
My name is Eric. I am married to Monica, who just so happens to be our gorgeous moderator. And we have been married for 8.5 years, and we have 2 boys, Zachary, who is 6, and Noah, who is 4.
Great, thank you. Dom?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dom Custodio. I'm married to Janelle, who's in the other room on the women's study, if you hear that in the background. We've been married about 38.5 years. We have 2 sons, 35 and 32, and between them they have 5 children, so we're proud grandparents. And had I known that grandparenting was that much fun, I'd have skipped the kid thing and gone right to that. And I'm retired these days, so I have nothing but time on my hands. So that's enough about me.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Rich.
Hi, I'm Rich Beretta, married to Jackie, my lovely wife, of 9 years in May. And we've got Reese Juliana, who is 5.5. We've got Josephine Grace, she's 2.5. And in July, baby Beretta number 3 is coming. And we got a boy. So that's the Beretta story.
So awesome. Well, great. So most of our moms for sure know this. I don't know if you guys do, but at both of our meetings, we asked moms to scribble down questions, and we collected probably 50 questions from each group. And so I've kind of gone through, a lot of the questions were the same questions, and a lot of them overlapped. And so I'm going to do my best to cover a lot of territory. And I guess we'll just kind of go in the order that you guys introduced yourselves. So Chris, gonna start with you. Are there areas that you view as dad territory versus mom territory? And if so, what does that look like in your household?
So first of all, that'll teach me to complain about going first. I would say in our household, dad territory, well, that's a tough one. I would say mainly discipline. Not that Corinne doesn't do any disciplining, but I don't know. I always feel like I'm the dictator a little bit. Disciplining, keeping kids in line, making sure that attitudes are in check. Certainly that would be Corinne as well, but I feel like she does more of the nurturing, because she spends most of the time during the day, a lot of the one-on-one teaching, especially now without the kids. And well, Zoe's not in school right now, so doing a lot of the teaching and making sure activities are done and all that good stuff. I certainly like to spend my one-on-one time with my kids on the weekends, but not to say that there isn't room for love, but I just feel like with Zoe especially, that there's a need for I'm having a hard time articulating it, but basically disciplining and things like that.
Great. Yeah, a lot of our questions had to do with roles and responsibilities and how that's divided in the household. So we'll be touching on that a little bit later. Okay, Jordan, are there any hats that you wish you got to wear more often, such as, being a friend or a professional or having time to do your hobbies or anything like that?
Boy, I mean, yes, obviously, I think that's probably true for any dad, or probably true for my wife, just the same, if we're being honest. And I think that, us personally, we've got a lot of friends. We've got a big community. We're fortunate enough to have that friendship and fellowship with them together.
Mm-hmm.
Wives, fiancés, girlfriends, wherever everybody's at. I would say, if anything, for myself sometimes, because life is hectic, and again, I acknowledge that's the case for Kristen as well.
Mm-hmm.
But like we're working and then parenting as well, and sometimes alone time is really tough to come by. I know that's probably going to get a lot of shut ups in the room from all the ladies, but something like, one of my things I like to do that really helps me center myself is, light a cigar and sit on the patio for like an hour and just recenter, because, we're working and that's stressful. So there's a lot of pressure. We're parenting and, splitting chores and, it's crazy for both sides, but, I feel the need to wear the hat of just myself more often, so I can kind of recenter and come back to earth.
Yeah.
After the
Yeah, alone time is like unheard of, especially with young kids.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing. All right, Jason. Let's see. Is there anything intentional you and your wife do to prioritize your marriage? Do you feel like marriage comes first?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm sure everybody can relate to this. It was a whole lot easier before we had our first kid, for us to prioritize our marriage and prioritize our time. And I think we really realized that in the last few months. And so Amanda and I just sat down and talked and said, you know what, we really want to make sure that our marriage is like top priority for both of us. What does it take? And she suggested, well, what if we took afternoons on Saturday from noon on, and that's just like, sometimes we have to have the kids, sometimes we can get a babysitter, sometimes we can get a parent to a grandparent to come and help, but whatever it looks like, that's all. That's like no work time, that's no homework time, that's just focus on our marriage time. And that has made a huge difference over the last couple of weeks, and I guess probably a couple months now.
So awesome. Alrighty, Dan. If you would have been given a manual the day your first child was born, what is the main thing you wish it would have said?
How thick was that manual, by the way? Oh boy, let's see. How about a couple things? One is you're gonna fail. You're not gonna get it right, and it's okay. It's gonna be fine. You know, don't put too much pressure. Just move on when you make a mistake, because you're gonna make a mistake. The second, I mean, and this is the old adage, another thing would be, you know, it goes so fast. I'm listening to a lot of you guys with the small kids and stuff, and I remember, you know, that phase. There's all phases, right? There's the phase where you can just leave your kid there and you come back, you know, and they're still there, which is great. And then they get to be mobile, and you can't really leave them there because you don't know where they're going to go. And it's amazing what you can do with one hand as you hold one. You know, you can make an entire meal and clean the whole house with one hand. But then there's the phase of, you know, they're mobile, they want to participate in activities, their schools, so you want to participate in all that. So just enjoy each phase. Don't try to say, oh, it's going to be so much better when they're in school. They're going to be so much better when they have a car. It's going to be so much better when they're out of the house. Each phase has its own special time. So just enjoy that, because there gets to be you get to the time where they are about ready to leave, you know, the house, and then they have left the house, and you wish you could have that phase back, which is probably why, you know, we have the love of grandkids, because you kind of relive that. So those are probably the two main things I wish were in some type of manual when you first have them.
So great. Yes. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard time flies, but it's so true. It's like blink and.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, it's just so crazy. All right, Eric. Do you see signals of your wife reaching her breaking point, and how do you respond?
This should be good.
No pressure.
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. I've been in a very fortunate situation where I've been able to be home for the last 14 months, little over a year, and I've learned a tremendous amount about how Monica operates, what makes her tick. I can tell when her cup is running empty, and I can tell when she needs to be replenished and recharged. And the things that I've done that I think has helped her out is when I can see those things coming, I'll tell her to leave, go for a drive, go ask some girlfriends if they can go for a walk around the block, whatever it is that she can do to recharge herself. And if she's at home and she's needing to work and it's chaotic and the boys are loud and she's having, a hard time concentrating, I'll just take them and we'll leave. I'll take them to the park. We'll go for a drive, whatever it is, just to give her a chance, a few hours to kind of get her stuff done in a quiet environment and space where she can, recharge herself and refill her cup.
Yes, I can vouch for that. And you've just gotten so in tune with that. And I will say, though, that that's probably been one of our bigger struggles, is just meeting each other's needs and communicating that. And because you guys all have boiling points and breaking points too. So I'll also, a little shameless plug, and our MOPS moms are really familiar with this, but the Enneagram has been helpful for me and Eric. I don't know if you guys are familiar, or if your wives have, or your neighbors, Dan. I know we've talked about it with you, but that has been a helpful tool for us to navigate each other and how we tick a little bit. It's like more innate in us. So
I think that's actually, if I could just add one quick thing, that's actually a really relevant question, not only in your situation, Eric, but actually in this last, couple of weeks to a month, et cetera. It's trying to make the most out of this situation, try to make the positive, see the positive aspect of this situation. And I know my boys and I have grown actually closer. I mean, obviously we've been with each other for the rest of our life, or for all of our lives, but just having this time together, once you kind of get over the shock of like, oh my goodness, we're going to be together, in the house, and now we can't leave at all, or, we'll get arrested or whatever it is. But, you kind of get to know each other on another level. So I'm not sure if that's the same with everybody else in their lives and stuff, but it's definitely, some positive aspect of this with my boys and I, for sure.
Yes, the gift of time to actually be able to navigate these things. And it's a curveball for sure, but it's turning out to be pretty amazing. All right, Dom, let's see. What, if anything, keeps you awake at night in worry? And have those worries changed over the years?
I'm not much of a worrier. Maybe I'm not smart enough to know that I should be worried about stuff. I'm not sure, but what I would give you from a perspective is probably the most struggle I had was the early on part. I mean, there was no manual. You have this lovely bundle of joy with no instruction. You're like, great. And I think within 6 months, I knew every nurse at the hospital where my kids were born on a first name basis, and they knew me as like, oh, hi, Dom. Because it's like, something comes out a different color, you don't know what that means. Or if they do something weird, you don't know what that is. And you're like, okay. And you're trying to figure out what normal looks like. But then after you get in the groove and you start to understand those things, then it's more about trusting God with them, right? It's like they were a gift from God in the first place. It's like, all right, we're stewards. This is your child. If you want me to do this right, you better make me smart, because I don't have another plan. So so Janelle and I just, spent a lot of time talking. Captain Morgan and rum works really good. Just kidding. It is good, but we didn't use it for that purpose. But it's just, and then taking it one day at a time, right? I mean, you can't live your whole life, and you can't live their whole life all at once. So it's just a matter of, Chuck Swindoll said his granddad told him life was such a daily thing. So he tried to keep that in mind as we went through each phase of their lives. And so worrying about things at night, that wasn't me.
That's so awesome. That's amazing, actually. I'm kind of the same way. I don't spend a lot of time, like I don't typically suffer from anxiety, and I just also have that perspective, like, this is not my life and this is not my game plan. Like, I'm just here trying to do my best to be smack dab in the middle of God's will. Alrighty, Rich. A lot of moms asked this question, and it was in different forms, but have you reached a point in your fatherhood where you would feel comfortable watching the kiddos while mom goes out of town? That's part A. Part B, if so, approximately how old were your kids when you felt confident to stay with them for long stretches of time?
So I'll speak maybe a little bit differently in our house. I think the question should have been, what point is my wife comfortable leaving me alone with the kids while she leaves? I think I've always been fine with it. I mean, when they were really young, they needed mama. There was only so much that dada can do. Even if we were not necessarily nursing, they still needed mama. So, we managed to get enough time for Jackie to get some alone mama time without the kids. And then it reached a point where Jackie's like, I want to go away for a couple days to Arizona, leave the kids with my mom, and we'll just go for a couple days. And I was totally fine with it. We went, and we didn't even get out of the airport, and she's like, I miss the kids. What am I doing? But to answer your question, I think it really was about the time that she left me with the kids and went out. It was just a matter of knowing that when she came back, that not that the house was a mess or, the kids, whatever, it's that I didn't lose my cool. Because one time she did, and I she came home and it was only a couple hours, and I was totally blowing up, oh, good, blah, 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 blah. Just I didn't have the best temper or patience. So that kind of discouraged her from wanting to do that again. And then that's when I said, no, I need to buckle down and get this right. So then I said, don't worry, I got it, get out of here. And then it was just kind of trusting myself, trusting my patience, and being definitely more patient with them. And when they're really young, it's hard. Now that it's older and they could talk, oh my gosh, that's really the key. When they could talk and they could understand what you're saying, so it's definitely easier. But yeah, it's just a matter of having that patience, and then Jackie trusting me that everything was going to be okay.
I'll open this up to all of you guys, but in general, after, and I'm not even saying a long weekend, but maybe even breakfast to dinner, do you guys feel like that created confidence for you guys? Or I don't know, I think that a lot of moms, it's just kind of this two-edged sword. They want to go out of town and maybe spend some time with their friends, but they don't want to stress you guys out. So anyway, was it a positive experience? Has it been a positive experience for you guys to spend long stretches with your kids?
Well, I'll tell you, the first time I spent a long time with my daughter, it was before my son came along. So my mother-in-law is in charge of ministries at the church, and she does the Villages of Hope in Zambia. And so Corinna spent a lot of time going over there with her, and she decided she was going to do one of the missions trips when Zoe was about 2 years old. Well, they went. Zoe was sick, and very sick, and so that was kind of a trial by fire. There's nothing like spending several days with your little baby child while she's sick. And so I think after that, everything was, I knew I could survive anything after that. So I'm not trying to speak for the other dads, but that definitely was a trial by fire. And you know, I think Corinne felt pretty comfortable knowing after that, you know, she could leave the kids. And then she does a lot of worship singing. So she spends a lot of weekends in rehearsals and things like that. So I think she feels pretty comfortable leaving the kids. Now I'm always happy when she's home on Sunday afternoon and then I get to go hand off the kids, but
Yeah. I feel like if it were me, I would personally feel relieved to not have mom hovering like, no, they shouldn't wear that. They need to wear this. And like, you guys have freedom to run the show however you want. That's just how I think that I would feel. But okay, Chris, you can keep the floor. We're back to you. What is one quality you appreciate about your wife since having kids?
well, I will say, and it's going to seem like I'm throwing my wife into you know, an oncoming bus in this, and I'm not. But and I will say the same for myself. You know, I think as human beings, we're pretty selfish to begin with. So there's something about the minute you see that little baby and you just know that your life is completely changed. That selfishness just goes right out the window. And I've got to say, I'm still in awe at how much my wife sacrifices on a daily basis for our kids and how much she devotes to our kids. And it's just one of those things that when I stop and think about it, I am just completely in awe. So, I mean, I'm sure every dad on this panel would say the same, but it's just one of those things where you just kind of see that immediate transformation where it's not me, it's them. And the minute they hold that baby, it has just never turned off. And I'm just constantly in awe of that.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Like, have you ever been jealous about that or resented that a little bit? Because like mom, whether we want to or not, like you said, baby is born, everything changes, and suddenly our focus is shifted from husband to I've got to keep this kid alive. They need me, they need my body. Like, you know, so has there ever been a little bit of agitation about that?
Honestly, no, there hasn't been, but I will say that our situation was a bit different than most. For the past 6 years, I've worked from home. So I've been present with my my wife and kids for, you know, every day. So that kind of creates a different dynamic where I get, not to sound selfish, but I get what I need in that, you know, most people go, you know, get a cup of coffee and talk to their coworkers. Well, if I'm stretching my legs, I go upstairs and I get to see my wife and we get to talk and we get to, you know, catch up for a minute and chit chat. I get to give my kids a hug and then I get to go back to work. So unfortunately that creates a different dynamic. And so it might be a different answer than maybe you were expecting, but
No.
you know, I feel like I feel like that kind of dynamic creates a situation where everybody gets what they need out of the day and out of each other.
So awesome. Thank you. Okay, Jordan. So overall, what do you need or want from your wife? Loaded question.
Yeah, wow. Oh boy. Something that's been heavy on our hearts in our marriage is we're fairly new to the parenting ball game and soon to be new to the multi-children ball game, which is I'm sure a whole different story. But one of the things that we're really trying to hone in on is being a team in all aspects throughout, you know, our marriage, our days, our lives together and our lives individually. So to answer that, like you said, loaded question. There's a billion things I want from her that I'm not, but I would say, it would just be communication and constant routine communication on where she's at, where's her bucket, where are her needs. Somebody was talking about that earlier. And then also asking me, although it's also my responsibility to return that, but say, hey, is there anything I can do for you? And I know that sounds selfish, but everybody's busy, everybody's crazy, everybody's doing their thing. And I think in order to be a team, it's a two-way, selfless street. A good example we have is when she's having a rough day, which is a lot right now with, the coronavirus and being pregnant like she is sometimes it's me, and this is just an example. This was from some leadership that we got in the past, is, hey, do you need me to jump in the puddle with you right now, or do you want me to pull you out of it? What are we going to do right here? And just having some really strict communication behind, our partnership, so that things are crystal clear between the two of us. And then having that back from her, for me being a pretty analytical and straightforward person, is I just want to hear it. Just tell me, and we'll go from there. And then we'll decide the next step once we're on the same page. I would say that.
That is excellent feedback. I think all of us moms can really, really benefit from hearing that, that response. All right, Jason, has your attraction to your wife changed since childbirth?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I saw that one on the list you sent, I was like, oh, that's probably the most thought-provoking question of any of the ones you sent for me. My initial answer was no, but I don't think that's the whole story. I think that my attraction to my wife was a lot more superficial. Not entirely superficial, not entirely shallow, but just a lot more shallow than after we had kids. So, I mean, obviously there's a whole lot of things that happen for her when she goes through pregnancy and childbirth. And it's, as somebody who's like, even just the process of childbirth, as somebody who's like a really clean person, it was like just brought me out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways that don't stop as you keep going with a newborn, now year-and-a-half-year-old. And so I think that I had to become aware of my attraction and what I was attracted to, and think about that, and be self-aware and reflective. But because of that, I feel like that attraction's a lot deeper, even whether physically or emotionally, deeper than it was before we had kids.
So great. And I think it's important to realize that attraction looks different, like it evolves over time. And that was another question that a lot of moms asked. Genuine fear that we would become less attractive after childbirth. So, all right, Dan, let's see here. When it comes to emotional and or difficult conversations, is there a way for men to become more vulnerable and open?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question, because as guys, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say our natural tendency is to hide those emotions. We're supposed to be, macho and get it all together and not really show our vulnerability or kind of wear our emotions on our sleeves. I would say when it comes to, your significant other or your kids, especially, one way that I've been able to do that is to share some personal experiences with them to try to relate on their level. So in fact, my one son and I just had a conversation the other night of something he was struggling with his brother, because that never happens, right? When they're 20 months apart, they never argue or fight. But they, so he was just going at it, and he was done. It was getting late, and I kind of knew that. But I just kind of opened up to him, and I shared a personal experience with myself. And he, immediately started to calm down and started to ask me questions on how I handled the situation. What did I do? And then he went back to himself. So it's kind of that. It's really trying to open up yourself to that personal experience, so they can see that you aren't, perfect. You still have the respect, as the man of the house, and especially with boys, they're trying to emulate you, and you're the role model. But if you kind of show that every once in a while and open up to them, I think that's a good way to do it.
That's also such great feedback. And I think that it's hard, like, to walk that fine line between being the authoritative, like you said, the man of the house, and kind of having an answer and an idea of how you want things to look, but also being vulnerable to really see eye to eye, especially with your older kids. Like, this might not come into play as much with our preschoolers,
Right.
but as they get older, to just really have that vulnerability to make them feel safe to share.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I was relating to the high schoolers, but when they were little, I would also, kind of open up to them and tell them, hey, when you do this, this is how it makes me feel. So kind of use your words, because they won't get it if I used an experience that I had. That's above them at that point. But just kind of say, hey, this, what do you think is going to happen when you do that? What do you think is the best choice? And then if you choose this path, this is possible consequences, or these are the things you're going to do to make me, feel bad or feel sad and stuff like that, and try to use your words that way. So
that's so great. All right, Eric, do you see counseling as a valuable tool?
Absolutely. Healthy people go to counseling, unhealthy people go to counseling, individuals go to counseling. I think it was Stan that just said this, we think we can go through this life on our own and we have all the answers, but we don't. And there should be no ashamed with getting the help that you need. I've been through counseling as an individual. I've been through couples counseling with you. Mm-hmm. And in both situations, it's taught me a tremendous amount about myself, and it's helped me grow not only as an individual, but I think it helped grow our marriage as well. Sometimes there can be a disconnect in a marriage where, you may not see what I'm trying to get across, or I'm not seeing what you're trying to get across, and to have somebody that can look into our marriage and kind of analyze it a little bit, and just to kind of give some points on that. I think counseling is a great tool.
Obviously I'm privy to this information, so just to share with everyone out there, and I've been pretty vocal about this with our MOPS moms, just we went and saw a counselor just because we kept hitting the same dead end, and they were able to help us get unstuck. Jordan, earlier you mentioned some training that you had, I love the imagery. Like, do you want me to get in the puddle with you or pull you out of the puddle? And I don't know if that training was in the form of like a mentor or a counselor or what, but just having those tools and resources to be able to unstuck yourself. Sometimes it's just like such a minor shift and not this like major overhaul that takes place. But Jordan, did you want to elaborate on that little piece at all?
No, I mean, that's what it came from. We have Both of our spiritual mentors, they're actually in Texas now, but we were at that point, we were just hitting a dead end, and it took a while for us to even get to the point where we were fine, unashamed, like Eric said, to take it to somebody else and just admit that we needed a little help. And like you said, it was a pretty small shift. It was, me being analytical and, logistically driven in every scenario. And I won't get too personal about it. And that obviously not being good for her, and her reactions not being good for me, and then having a way to, get out of your own way and look at things through her eyes, and me trust that she will do the same to me. And if there was that trust right there, then that I knew and she knew that we were each on the same page on how we were going to treat things, then boom, it was like that initial fix was fantastic, and it changed the way things were. And it's just something that we wouldn't have, like Eric said, that we would not have seen had somebody from the outside not kind of pointed that out and sent us in a different direction.
Thank you for sharing. That's brave and vulnerable and really appreciated. Okay, let's see here. Dom, did you ever feel as though your personal needs weren't being met? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. How much time do you have left? I'm just kidding. The short answer is absolutely. If you ever want to pressure test to see if your marriage is really going well, have a kid. It'll absolutely exploit every weakness that there is in you as an individual, as in you as a marriage partner. And it goes multidimensionally throughout the relationship. You thought you were a good communicator, and you found out that you stink. And you thought you had endurance and you had patience, and you have none of those. And it's that 2 o'clock in the morning thing, and you're faking sleep and hoping your spouse will get up and go get the kid before you do. It's all of those things. And so but I would also call it God's training ground, because it's not what happens when you feel that way. It's what you do with it. And I would so echo what Eric said. Anybody that thinks they can just do this by themselves is an idiot. And just God put men in my life that walked me back from the edge of the cliff more times than I could count. My dad was not what I would call a role model. He was very singularly, he had a single dimension that you would see on any number of R-rated movies, and that wasn't me. And so I was so grateful to have people in my life that God put in there to help me understand, yes, on the surface, you might feel this way when your wife gave you her undivided attention until this 8-pound something showed up, and now you wonder if she remembers your name. And then it's like, you get to this crossroads where you decide, I need to be part of this or I need to pull away. And there are obvious conclusions to both of those paths. But it really helped me to grow, because it put a bright spotlight on the areas where I had to do some heavy lifting to bring the best me that I could to the table.
Wow, great answer. And again, thank you for that vulnerability and transparency and sharing that.
You bet. You bet.
Okay, Rich, do you ever wish you could go back to the way your relationship with your wife was before kids?
YES. Yes. All right, I'll answer more to that. Yeah, so we talk about that all the time. It's a shared feeling. It's not just me. It's not just Jackie. We're looking at the kids. We're at the dinner table. I mean, Josephine's not eating her food, throwing it on the floor, and Reese is standing on the table and running laps around us, and we haven't even started eating yet. And Jackie goes, "Do you remember when?" And we would just go back to you. And then sometimes we get a taste of it, you know. So the kids will be at my mother-in-law's house. Jackie and I will be in the house, and I'll say, "Do you hear that? It's the sound of silence." Like, man, we both wish we had that time when we were. I mean, it was a short period, you know. We weren't married very long before we decided to have children. We're happy we did. We're happy we were young with children. But I think it's nice because it's not a complaint. You know, it's not, oh, these kids are draining on our patience and our marriage, and we just wish we could go back. It's not that at all. I mean, something I've learned as a parent, especially when you've got the needy ones and the newborns, is, man, do you value alone time with your wife, however short it is. And like, I know once we had, like, actually this the other morning, like, Jackie's not a morning person. She woke up early. I'm a morning person. So we woke up, we like creep downstairs. I grind coffee, but I go in the basement and lock the door so that no children will wake up when we're grinding coffee. And then I'll creep upstairs, we'll brew it, and we'll sit and we'll have a cup of coffee together. And it is literally 10 minutes. And it feels like I spent all day with her. It's like, wow, we had a conversation. I could finish my sentence. I could finish my thoughts. You know what it's like when you're trying to talk to at the dinner table. You can't even talk. I start talking, and then Josephine starts, and Jackie's like, "Nope, Rich, not now, please. I can't have the three of you talking to me at the same time." So we do value our alone time a lot more now that we have kids. And that's the one thing. It's like, I mean, Dom, you were saying it before, like you learn something about yourself and your spouse through marriage and children. And it's like, we learn like how to really appreciate time and the present moment a lot better.
I think every single one of us can relate to the story you just shared in some way. Yes, 1,000 times yes. It is a regular refrain for me and Eric too. It's like, oh, well, and keep in mind, like, we're both aviation, and so our before kids life was like going to Bali and going to Italy, and now it's like going to Walmart. So
I'll just let you know, someday you'll get to remember how to spell that word spontaneous one more time. It comes back.
Yes. Well, guys, we only made it through 2 questions each, and we're coming up on an hour. So I'm going to just wrap us up. Does anyone have any final words? Anything that they'd like to share? Maybe we can kind of end with this question. And if any of you have anything to contribute, by all means. And if not, we will go ahead and close this out. But I think it was asked to someone, is there anything about fatherhood that you wish mothers would know that you don't think that we do?
I tell you, Monica, from my perspective, if there was one thing that I would love any mom to know, it's that there isn't a time when we're not trying to do our best. The implementation might be poor, but our intentions are all in. And learn, if I know that moms are under a lot of pressure, but if they could learn to embrace the differences between husbands and wives and the different roles and the hats that are being constantly spun around your head, and just I guess the brief way would be to describe it would be assume good intent, and give your spouse the benefit of the doubt. Ask, help me understand questions before you go, what the hell were you thinking? Things like that would really go a long way, because we may have a gruff exterior, but we're just as nervous and unsure as anybody else on the planet.
I don't think I could have expressed that any better, Dom. That was perfect. And Corinne and I are going through that right now, where, you know, Zoe is, you know, she's having a hard time listening, and you're trying to get through to her and trying to get her to understand. And I know as a dad, I try to be as gentle as I can, but sometimes I'm not. And Corinne just doesn't understand why I'm being so gruff about it. And man, I'm glad she's going to hear that, because that was great.
Yeah, I agree. It brought tears to my eyes. It's just such a good way to wrap up this call, just by the reminder that you guys are just as deserving of grace and patience and affirmation. So, hi, Janelle. All right, guys. Well, the MOPS community.
Real quick,
Oh,
can I add one more thing real quick?
yep.
I would just say that if you have needs that need to be met, ask for them. Don't try to wait for us to figure them out. Don't try to make us guess what they are. You certainly don't want us to misinterpret them. If you have needs, just be upfront and ask for them.
I think that goes a long ways with most things. Just say,
Mhm.
because we're not that smart. We can't figure it out. We're not going to take hints. Just say it.
That's why God made women smarter than us.
My mom did tell me early on, like just even as I was dating, not even as I was engaged or married, like men are not mind readers. You have to tell them what you're thinking. Like we're just this complex, emotional mess, and you guys should not be expected to navigate that. But this is me as a 41-year-old with a lot of life experience at this point. So, yeah, Rich.
I got something to add to that.
Sure.
One of the questions I had was about love languages,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be brief here. So if
Yeah,
my
no
love
worries.
language is speaking, I have to speak, and I want people to speak to me. And maybe it's a man thing, like we just said, like, honey, if you're having an issue, you got to tell me. I can't read, you know, your lips, your eyes, if you're trying to be subtle or whatever, or drop me. Like, no, I need to speak. But that's my love language. And I feel like that book with those 5 love languages, it doesn't take you all that long to read. It's so helpful to know. Well, I look at it 2 ways, right? There's my love language and Jackie's love language. So I know hers is not talking. So if I'm expecting her to talk to me, I'm going to be waiting here for a while. So I got to learn her love language, and it's acts of service. So that's the way I need to talk to my wife. I need to clean the kitchen. I need to put stuff away. I need to help with the children. Like, I have to turn my words into action to speak to her. And then I have to learn how she speaks to me. I was like, well, she's not using words, she's using actions. And I have to take a step back at the end of the day and go, wow, honey, look at all these awesome things you did for me. I just needed to listen and receive them a little differently. I can't expect you to talk to me the way my family did growing up. But the second way the love language is helpful is like children. Oh my gosh, they speak all 5 languages and they change every week. And that's like one day it's quality time. I want to spend every waking second with you, Mom, Dad. And then the next is words. I want to talk to you until you don't want to hear me talk anymore. And it's crazy how they just pivot, and it helps like to know them and to sense them and to say, okay, well, they're speaking to me a different way, and they're always changing, and they're growing, and they're watching me, and then they're learning stuff at school. So I'd say just being conscious that there are different ways that our children and our spouses talk to us, and we just have to just be aware and listen for them because they're there.
That is such great feedback also. And we did just at our last 2 MOPS meetings, you know, pre-COVID, we talked about the love languages for children a little bit, but that ended up transferring into talking about relationships. And it is just such a easy, or I shouldn't say easy, but a simple tool that you can apply to really every relationship. And I've said before, like, it is not, so I'm words of affirmation also. And Eric's nature is not necessarily to be hyperverbal. So I've said before, like, it is unsexy, but I have to say to him, you need to tell me I look nice. And he has arrived, like, he now speaks my language. But yeah, it's like, or my parents are a good example too. My dad is physical touch and my mom is acts of service. And it took them 25 years to learn that they were not speaking each other's language. And once they made that little tiny adjustment, now they're like blissfully in love. No, just kidding. All right, anybody else? Okay, well, you guys, I couldn't have asked for a better panel. This was so great. I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing tomorrow night at 8? Can we do this again? The MOPS, all of our MOPS moms are going to gift each of you guys with a $10 Starbucks gift card. And so I know where most of you live, and we'll be making little porch deliveries. So thank you for taking the time out of your, well, I mean, it's not like we have anywhere that we can go, but taking the time out of your really busy, hectic, stay-at-home existence to share your feedback, your wisdom, your perspective with us. It's just been really, really valuable. So we can all wave. I'm gonna end this meeting. Thank you, and God bless each and every one of you guys.
Take care. Good night.
Thanks so much.
Good night.
Good night.